Hi, I'm Lisa, and this is Hannah. Welcome to our Ancient Paths. Today we're going to be discussing the topic of making a covenant by placing your hand on the inner thigh. But what does that really mean?
Yeah, this was fascinating to me when I first started studying this. I'm going to read out of Genesis 24. This is where Abraham is old and he needs to get a bride for his son. And he doesn't want just any bride. He wants somebody from the family, so to speak. So we start out with verse 1 of Genesis 24. Now Abraham was old, advanced in years, and Adonai blessed Abraham in everything. Then Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household who managed everything that belonged to him, now put your hand under my thigh, so that I may make you take an oath by Adonai, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from among the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I am dwelling. On the contrary, to my land and to my relatives you must go and get a wife for my son Isaac. So it goes on that he gives him all these parameters of what he wants in a wife and where he's to go. And at the very end, in verse 9, it says, so the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and he made a pledge to him concerning this matter.
Okay, and then we find another place in Scripture where a covenant is made by placing a hand on the inner thigh. And this is in Genesis 47 and 29. And this is when Jacob, or Israel, is about to die. He's on his deathbed, and he calls his son Joseph to him. And he says, and the time drew nigh that Israel must die. And he called his son Joseph and said unto him, if now I have found grace in your sight, put, I pray you, your hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray you, in Egypt. But I will lie with my fathers, and you shall carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place, which is Machpelah. And he said, I will do as you have said. And he said, swear unto me, and he sware unto him. So, I always just thought it meant they put their hand on the inner thigh.
Yes.
And I thought, well, how stupid is that?
Yeah.
I didn't see any significance, and I thought that it was some ancient practice that everybody did.
Right.
But now I know that it's not.
It was something that was very specific to the Jewish people or the Hebrews, this people, for actually a very specific reason. When people made covenants in the ancient Near East, they always invoked their gods, especially these covenants that were very significant, that meant the most. They would invoke their gods, and by doing so, they would go to the temples. They would make these pledges in front of the temple deities, or they would bring a sacrifice. If they couldn't get to the temples, somebody could bring something to them,
Or maybe one of their household idols.
or something to them where they could make that covenant promise. But Abraham and later Jacob, there's a problem there because they don't worship idols.
That's right.
And their God is invisible.
That's right.
There's no representation for that God.
And they're forbidden from having one.
Exactly. So what is the only representation of the covenant?
The circumcision.
The circumcision. Exactly. And so, according to Biblical Archaeology Review, and this is from an archaeological magazine, they were actually making an oath on the only thing that was covenantal to their God, which was the circumcision, and it was not putting a hand under the thigh. It was actually taking the genitalia in hand and swearing on that circumcision.
Oh.
Yeah. It was, it's fascinating. The ancient, we read these things in the Bible and we think, oh, they're so backwards. Why would they do something like that? Nothing they did was in a vacuum. There was always a reason for everything they did. And covenant promises in the ancient Near East were very and how do I
Well,
put
they
it?
were very sacred.
They
Unlike
were
today,
sacred.
we don't have very many things that are truly sacred.
Not in covenants,
Not in
I mean,
covenants.
not even marriage covenants are
No,
sacred,
No. Mm.
you know. So
Their covenants were so sacred that it was tied to, if you break it, you get death. I mean,
That's
it was
right.
that serious.
exactly, I
Yeah.
mean, you think about the covenant that Abraham made with God.
That's right.
You know, the covenant that Abraham made with God was where they laid out these pieces, and by covenant making protocols, both parties were supposed to walk in between these pieces, and they were actually pledging their life and their
That's right.
blood, that if they didn't fulfill their promise, or if they broke their promise,
They got
that they
killed.
would die just like these animals
That's
did.
right.
And that's something that is so, and a little bit off topic of this maybe a little bit, but think it's so beautiful about the story of God's covenant with Abraham, is because God's covenant with Abraham is for all mankind, not just a certain group of people, because he said through your seed everybody will be blessed.
That's right.
And God's covenant with Abraham was made with only God walking through the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
He took the penalty
He
on
took the
himself.
penalty. That's right, because the covenant was broken,
Mhm.
but Yeshua took the penalty.
That's right. And we broke the covenant. Abraham and so on have broken that covenant since the beginning. But like you said, Yeshua paid the penalty for
That's right.
that. And now that covenant is restored.
That's right. So when we look at circumcision, and as a woman,
Mhm.
it doesn't apply to me,
Right.
but I still come under the circumcision covenant because of, I don't know, the men in my life,
Mhm.
because I pledged myself to Christ and all of that. But when we look at circumcision, when we look at the birth of Isaac, well, let's go back to the birth of Ishmael. There was nothing supernatural about the birth of Ishmael.
Right.
It was a normal conception
Mhm.
and birth.
Mhm.
But then, if you think about the circumcision and the birth of Isaac, it was supernatural because Sarah's womb had been closed,
Mhm.
and there was nothing that Abraham could do to open her womb.
Right.
And then he was circumcised,
Mhm.
which to me, this is just, I have to kind of make things connect.
Mhm.
But every time that Abraham looked at himself, he would see God in that, you've made a promise to me that I'm going to have a son.
Right.
But I can't make this happen in a natural way
Right.
that I did with Ishmael,
Yeah.
or that every other man does.
Right.
In a natural way. I can't get my wife pregnant.
Yeah.
And so I look at myself and I see, and I remember this promise that I'm going to have a son, but I can't make it happen.
Right. Yes.
The
it's
natural
all
way.
So.
But it does happen,
Yeah.
and it happens supernaturally, and circumcision is a sign of the supernatural covenant
Oh,
of the
that's
promise.
good. Yes.
That
Yeah.
no human being can make happen
Right.
naturally,
Right.
even though, hey, it's been tried. I mean, tried over and over with Sarah and Hagar,
Mhm.
and with, just keep,
Look at Rachel.
exactly.
Rachel, couldn't have,
That's right.
wasn't.
Elizabeth, barren
Mhm.
in the New Testament with John,
Yeah.
and even the birth of Yeshua with Miriam.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
They're all supernatural. There's nothing physical that man or woman could do to make those.
And isn't that amazing
Births
how
happen.
God worked through all of that through women who couldn't bear children or shouldn't have borne children, like Miriam,
That's
with
right.
Yeshua,
That's
she,
right.
how he worked through us to make his promises come to fruition.
pass.
Yeah.
And all of it was supernatural, and even then I think about the bridge that was built. We had no way to go back to God,
Mm-hmm.
but God came to us
Yeah.
supernaturally.
Right.
But it's all tied back to the circumcision promise.
Mhm.
And that's why they could put their hands on the genitalia
Mhm.
and make a covenant. I claim the promise
Yes.
made for Abraham, made to me, or for Jacob, made to my father Abraham. And
And
that's
that
Isaac and
covenant
me.
promise was way more powerful than any other covenant promise with a pagan god could have ever been.
That's right. Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. Any more thoughts?
That's about it on that one.
Okay. Join
We'll
us
see you
next time. We'll see you
Yep.
next time.